Good evening, everybody. I thought that as we'd finally arrived at the 11th and the last session of the Synthesized Tarot course that myself and a group of friends have been working through for over a year now, about 15 months, I thought I'd do another reading. We're at the Fool and its binary pairing, which is the World. So the Fool 0 and 21, and the World number 22, which, as Shmakov explains, actually form a Turner. The Fool really is at the crux and the heart of Shmakov's entire Holy Book of Thoth tarot system. And this is in contrast with our other members and friends of the Russian Silver Age school. Valentin Tomberg, I've suggested previously, puts me in mind the most of the Hermit, and it's in this letter, the Ninth Arcanum, that his I just feel like he really identifies with the Hermit, and that's where he gives the teaching of black perfection and the resolution of binaries, which again, by contrast, in the Moebius work we find in Arcanum 1, the Magician. And likewise do I identify Moebius with the Magician, whilst Nina Rodnikova I see as a High Priestess figure for this chain. And there are quite some differences between all these works, which we've gone into quite a bit in the past. It's really quite pronounced in the Fool. So Shmakov's reading of the Fool, he basically sees it as containing all the other arcana within it, because in its aspect of being Arcanum 0, this is the teaching of the absolute first cause, the universal first cause of the one reality, whereas the aspect of it as the 21st Arcanum is self-consciousness of that reality. And he says in the aspect of a single spirit dreaming of its Maya. And Shmakov's system is a decad system. So the Fool, he says, is a synthesis of the cycle of the first 10 arcana, containing within it all those archetypal forms in essence. Whereas Arcanum 22 is, he says, the self-consciousness of reality in the aspect of the world environment, a single phenomenal quasi-reality, and a synthesis of the second 10 arcana, the unteachable second decad, the dynamic tourbillons of Arcana 11 onwards. Now, one thing they all have in common, which Tomberg emphasizes as well, is that the Fool is analogous with the invincible letter Shin, the fiery mother letter Shin, which in the Moebius teaching, which I'm going to read from now, this is a great danger. In a nutshell, you do not want to let another person, especially not a magician, put the Fool's cap upon your head. So Moebius is operating in a world of astral magical battles that are ongoing all the time. This is something that fellow magicians and mages may recognize. I remember it from my younger days, and the flame throwing and the inflation and the perpetual tension of the work of the fallen humanity as they try and reintegrate. As Paul Christian puts it, Shin, the letter 300, represents the punishment following every error. So, as I've already shared some of the Schmackle teachings with the other group members, I'll read a bit from Moebius. I remember when I first read this Arcanum feeling quite afraid, actually, of its implications. I'd spent so long studying the letter Shin and identifying with the letter Shin, but I didn't understand the dangers associated with it, especially to the exclusion of the other letters, as I was doing in my youth. So, in the Hebrew alphabet, let me just check. I am actually filming this, aren't I? Yeah, that would be really foolish, wouldn't it? In the Hebrew alphabet, the sign of this arcanum is Shin. The numerical value of the Shin arcanum is 300. There are no astrological correspondences. The hieroglyph is an arrow in an oscillatory motion. This symbol leads us to the idea of something ultimate, elusive, without a preliminary study of the unsound, more general phases of the movement of the same arrow, which was found in the 7th and 15th arcana, which are the chariot and the devil. In the 7th arcanum, an arrow flies straightforwardly according to laws that are metaphysically necessary and scientifically understandable. In the 15th arcanum, it moves around the circumference of a circle, or better, along a spiral line that defines the nodal points of the astral vortex. Here, in the 21st and most mysterious of the arcana, this movement has turned into an oscillatory one. The oscillatory movement can be conditionally included in the types of movement along a closed circuit, considering it as a very particular case of this movement. This does not prevent this particularity from attaching great importance to the practical field of manifestations. The erudite name of the arcanum, Furka, forked, gives only a hint of the shape of the letter itself, whereas the common name, the Fool, refers only to the picture. Let us look at the card for the true explanation of the arcanum, or at least some of its meaning. Approaching the rock, a human figure goes quickly towards a precipice. The head is covered by a hood. The man does not look at himself, but he looks at a point in the sky where nothing is seen. He does not notice the open-mouthed monster waiting for him behind a cliff. Dressed in rags, he does not care about the appearance of his clothes, which are being torn apart even more ferociously by a dog. In hand, the foolish pilgrim has a solid staff that neither uses nor defends itself against the dog. With the right hand, the madman holds a long stick against the tip of his shoulder and brings on the other end a bulky and heavy bundle. Who could this pilgrim be? The human figure serves as an indication of the individualization of the forces affected by the arcanum. But how are these forces used? The corporeal man apparently was created for life in the physical plane, and in the picture he goes to the abyss where, moreover, the crocodile's mouth awaits him. The purpose of clothes is to cover and protect the body, and here clothes do not fulfill their purpose, and nor does the wanderer's staff. He is in a hurry, but at the same time he is not aware that by dropping his burden and driving away the dog, he could advance more easily. In a word, he behaves surprisingly and unexpectedly for the viewer. His behaviour seems to suggest that he is expecting a miraculous intervention and that for this to be better demonstrated, the pilgrim renounced using the resources at his disposal that would be useful to him. There is an effect, but it is produced by some contrast, the desire to neglect the normal logic of actions. We complement the impression with an arithmetic analysis of the number of the Arcanum. But what to take for the number, 0 or 21? The 0 number should be understood as a hint at the exceptional position of the Arcanum in relation to the others, whereas the number 21 is more fruitful. Now, this arithmetic deconstruction goes on for quite some time. I might go back to that. The number corresponding to Shin is 300. That is, a 3, but an enlarged 3, which penetrates into the complex world of the 10th Sephirah and its 10th manifestation. We would like to add a few words about this mysterious arcanum of the mechanism of evolution and involution. It is important not to go by your own will to the cliff where lies the open throat of the monster. It is important to shed both time and the burden itself, to push the dog away, to lean on the staff, provide yourself with decent clothes, throw off the hood, and look in front of you. Then we will not be subject to the involuntary action of the invincible Shin. On the contrary, when we need to act on subplanes lower than ours, we will know how to put the cap on the heads of those who start the evolutionary work. It is also useful to note that the card intentionally presents the negative aspects of the Arcanum Shin, not just so that the occultist does not let others put a cap on his head, not only so that he himself learns to decorate with this cap the head of those who deserve it, but also so that he can use himself, when necessary, this garment on his own head, imitating the figure of the card. And we'll remember at this point Tom Berg's Way of the Fool, whose esoteric name is Love, the innocent fool, who's, with his cap, has the equivalent of the mantle of the Virgin, by which he may pass safely through the zone of deception, the belt of lies, the realm of Maya. An evolved being is always aware of the illusory character of values and pleasures, usually so appreciated on Earth. He feels the weight of his physical wrapping, but in spite of this, he has no right to get rid of it before a set time. Karma outlines a program of trials and sacrifices during his incarnation, and he must tread this path to full extent. In certain difficult moments, it is useful to know how to close your eyes to the impermanence of the physical plane, to know and awaken in itself the interest for the joys of life, instill in itself an illusion of happiness, which effectively is in the world. Would such an imitation of the Fool be a complete and voluntary oblivion of what was absorbed in the initiation? No. It would be just a momentary rest in the difficult road of life. It is certain that the pilgrim must learn to progress resolutely and intimately, but must also know how to predict and reasonably share the moments of rest for the restoration of their forces. We will say even more. Who never ceases to be wise, who completely forgot the selfish pleasures, will no longer appreciate the small sacrifices you make to one another in life. He will know how to bring pleasure to his fellow men. It has been said that we should love the like as ourselves, and that is to say also to give him what we ourselves would appreciate if we forgot our wisdom, So do unto others, of course, as we would have them do unto us. As mentioned, the mechanism of involution is analogous to that of the inverse process, that is, of rebirth. However, the fall is metaphysically fast and the rebirth metaphysically slow. Add the word metaphysically purposely, for it is not physical time, but rather from the fact that the process of rebirth is carried out in general according to several planned and consecutive phases, while the fall tell only the causes and their consequences. Because of this, the attempts of a Kabbalistic analysis of the human fall give the impression of there being complications, whilst the scheme of the rebirth of man through the ethical emeticism is easily understood and acceptable. The profane understand and study the gospel without fear, but are stunned trying to analyse the Old Testament. We can see that Shin is a terrible arcanum. To apply it ineptly or not in time is to delay the course of world evolution. That is why its mark frightens so many, even initiates. Meanwhile, the highest, most powerful synthetic pentagram of the astral name of Yeshua, Yod He Shin Vav He, precisely by its sign Shin, provides itself with the possibility of incarnation, this reference point of the atonement of human collectivities and consequently the reintegration of the primary perfect man. We will not be afraid of realizations, but we will emphasize in our prayers for initiation our desire to know the 21st Arcanum not by a trick, not by a thief's method, not by the price of a pact with the lower astral, but hermetically, honestly, after systematic penetration into the previous 20 arcana. Then he will lead us not to fatal errors, not to stains on karma, but to the conscious triumph of the Rosicrucian reintegration by the process of the full threefold application of the great arcanum of magic. And then he goes into a complement to this arcanum. One of the most important aspects of this arcanum is the problem of the real and the illusory, the appearance of many deceptive times under which both the real and the illusory can manifest themselves, and also of the relativity of the two, depending on the point of view of which they are being perceived. For each human being, the concept of the real and the illusory depends on the plane in which the centre of their consciousness is. The three titles of the arcanum, radiatio, signum, and matter, correspond to the 3 degrees of densification of the single substance from its source to the dense state, its subtle source. The intermediate plane, that of the symbols of the astral, is sometimes called the universal mirror because it reflects the emanations, radiatio, and form everything, signum, that will manifest in the dense plane of matter. However, descending, reality loses a part of its strength and its purity, and this loss will be all the greater the lower the plane of its manifestation. The symbol is more real than its dense manifestation, for it exists on the astral plane before it appears in the physical, and will exist in the astral after the disappearance of its manifestation in the physical plane. The astral form is the sine qua non condition of any appearance on the physical plane, and therefore it is more real than the dense form. From this we can deduce that the lower the manifestation, the more ephemeral it will be. It is very important to understand that the concept of the real and the illusory has meaning only in confrontation with the various planes. It is a relative rather than absolute concept. He changes progressively as far as the ascent or descent on the ladder of Jacob. Of course, the divine world, being the highest, is absolutely real. This is where the 0 point comes in. However, each plane, seen within its own limits, seems to be the only real one. This reality, so-called, must be taken into account as long as we live in a certain plane, without forgetting, however, its ephemeral character comparatively to the higher planes. It is not the circumstances of, is it not, no, it is not, sorry, my eyesight, terrible. It is not the circumstances of earthly life that can negatively influence the soul, but the importance that it can attribute to them, considering them as the only reality. In such a case, the graduation becomes inverted, and it is the higher planes that seem to be illusory. In such conditions, the whole effort of life is directed towards the acquisition of terrestrial values. Among these, he says, occupying the first position are material goods and women, or men, perhaps. Gotta have a man. The slightly more subtle aspect of terrestrial values is the desire for fame, for social success, and also for family happiness. As man evolves, his goals become higher. However, as long as the search is not directed to the plane of the higher self, there will always be something illusory about it. The deeper one goes into the study of the Arcanum 21, the more aspects will be discovered that are totally new and unexpected. The card has only one negative aspect of Arcanum 21. However, even in this presentation, we can also discern two facets, the real and the illusory. Common humanity will see a fool or a madman who, following something illusory, creates his own perdition. This is the reality for human society. For the fool subjectively, the real is diametrically opposite. He no longer gives value to what men in general appreciate so much, for he perceives something real, invisible to others. He advances resolutely, and neither the cliff nor the monster can stop it nor push it back. Perhaps there is no other way for him to approach his real, and he is ready to take risks and, if need be, to sacrifice everything. Meditate a little on how much the words of the gospel, whoever wants to keep his life or his soul in certain gospels loses it. Whoever loses his life or soul because of me finds it. It's from Matthew, Gospel of Matthew. And what's wisdom in the eyes of the world is folly to heaven, and vice versa, is also a well-known saying from the Bible. It is also possible that the precipice and the monster no longer have power over the pilgrim, if he already knows they are only delusional. The fool does not care about his own appearance, does not bother to be considered silly, does not reject the hood, even if it were easy to do so. Possessions are tiny in quantity and value. His environment, his friends, and public opinion bitterly criticize him. It is the dog that he attacks that's attacking him, judging by his own measure. For them he has no judgment, since he does not seek to live well. The pilgrim, if he wished, could defend himself and even punish them. He has the means to do it, has a staff, the power, but does not want to use it for that purpose. Such is your will. The real of ordinary humanity is despicable and illusory for the pilgrim. The real of the pilgrim is inconceivable and ignored by mankind, who sees the conduct as being pure madness. We also add that the Eastern teaching concerning the Maya of the physical world belongs totally to the field of Arcanum 21. Hermeticism, however, emphasizes the difference between the concept of the illusory nature of the physical world and the non-existence of this world, considering the last concept as being a deformation or deformity of the truth, which can lead to contempt of life and to the denial of the value of any work in the physical world. So I think that's quite a lot to digest. So I'll leave that there. Thank you.